Good. Well, welcome back. It's final session of the day. This is a lunchtime session, and we're going to be hearing from Ruth Ibegbuna, who many of you will know founded the amazing organisation Reclaim. Has also founded the Roots programme, real community power, community-led organisations trying to change the way we think about a variety of social challenges. And now, very excitingly, she's founded Rekindle School, which, as I said before, is really taking a community power, student-led approach to rethinking education, absolutely vital area of work. And she'll also be joined by Jaiden Corfield, who is one of the trustees at the school. So over to you, Ruth.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. I appreciate the fact that I've heard this is your lunchtime. So, double commitment for coming back when I'm sure you've got better things to be doing. We've got about 45 minutes together. So myself and Jaiden will take you through sharing about the school that we are creating and that we're both wildly in love with. We'll try not to get too evangelical about it, but there's going to be space at the end for 15 minutes for questions and answers. So first of all, absolutely delighted to be here. Anything at the moment that is about hope and the strength of communities is where I need to be. And you'll hear a lot more about why this is kind of my happy place at the moment. I think Jaiden's going to talk a little bit about kind of lockdown and its impact. Whilst we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I've got to be honest, working on this programme to bring the school to life has kind of kept me going throughout lockdown. And we're going to share with you kind of what the supplementary school is, but I think more importantly, the approach, the methodology behind it, and the fact that young people have been given the opportunity to lead. And it's come up with some pretty surprising but incredible results. So over to you, Jaiden.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Ruth said, the past 6 months have been, well, the past 12 months have been a really challenging time for everyone, but the past 6 months I've experienced the most challenging. I think it is Rekindle that has kept us on the straight and now. I became a student in September, first time student. I moved from one of the 5 most deprived estates in the UK in Salford to Oxford, which was a massive culture shock. And I had to learn all the new things that entailed being a student, but I also had to learn how to be a student in lockdown, how to make friends in lockdown, which is pretty much impossible. And being surrounded by the same four walls every day, a complete lack of social interaction. And most days, not aiming for pity here, but most days it was a struggle to pull your head over the cover. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that over the past year. And I think what kept me going is having something like Rekindle to wake up to. Rekindle is a supplementary school that will open in September in South Manchester. We aim to help those disillusioned with education fall back in love with education. And I think when we say that, a lot of people think it is for those failing in education, and it is not. It's for those who need help to fall back in love with it. And I think there we embrace cultural awareness, we embrace critical thinking, change making, we embrace a curriculum that sees young people as individuals. It's completely youth-led, and I think waking up in the morning and having that over the past 6 months has been incredibly motivating. And so, yeah, I think I'll hand back over to Ruth to explain the background of Rekindle and why we're here.
Okay, so thanks, Jaiden. So my background is that I was a teacher for several years, and I've spoken before about the fact that in when I was training to be a teacher, I lived in a boarding school for a year. It was free rent, and it was a very nice place to be, and it was just really fascinating to me that kind of Wednesday afternoons, everyone in the school, including the head teacher, down tools, and everyone worked on their critical thinking, and that was what people did on Wednesday afternoons. And then I came to work in my state school in Bradford and then in Manchester, and it felt like that was something that was only for the most privileged young people, or only for the top set young people, and everyone else in state schools, critical thinking, what's that? Why on earth would they need it? And I've always been mildly obsessed about how, as a country, we look after our young people. We're very good at looking after our own young people, right? And if we run a service or we run a charity, we look after those young people. But as a whole, how we look after our young people is something that I think is profoundly upsetting sometimes in the UK. And I remember that in 2014, when there was the UNICEF poll that had that British children were the unhappiest in Europe, And I genuinely read that and thought, this is it. This is a seismic moment when we're going to recognise as a country that we've got to do things differently. Our children are the unhappiest in Europe. And it was kind of a Guardian headline piece for a day. And I think there were some conferences, and then we all kind of moved on. And I don't recall the systematic change that occurred at that point where we decided how to make our children happier. And I think we've seen more and more of that even during the pandemic. You know, the way that we haven't even had a kind of youth focus in terms of the fact that a lot of the young people were feeling really frightened, not really understanding what was going on with the pandemic. They were the most affected in many ways because what was happening to them in schools, they were losing grandparents, and yet there was just very little focus on what needed to happen for young people. At the same time, we had the exam algorithm scandal going on. And my background's always been very much supporting working class young people to soar and to feel that they have the right to be seen and heard anywhere the hell they want to be. And so this year's really felt like we've all been squashed, but especially we have squashed young people. And I don't think we've allowed them to see themselves playing a powerful role in the future. Over to you, Jaiden.
Francesca, could we show the first slide, please? Coming into this, I really wanted to discuss the impact that the lockdown had on young people and how we look at it coming out of that. So these are some of the headlines that have hit the paper recently over the past 6 months, and I think it shows how we have failed many young people, especially working class young people, from exam grades and algorithms that massively failed individuals in working class areas, to technology that never arrived, students encouraged to go to university but then failed by a lack of pastoral care. All of this is where young working class people especially looked and saw massive failings in the system, and once again became massively disillusioned with the system that was clearly not built for children like them. And I think that is what motivates us to build better within Rekindle. And I think coming into this, we also had to find the providers of hope. Who were those individuals within communities and individuals within the wider society who are providing hope and coming back stronger? And one of those for Rekindle, and a massive inspiration for Rekindle throughout this, has been Marcus Rashford. At Rekindle, we promise to provide a free school meal for every young child every night. We think it's a massively important part of the process. And Marcus Rashford has ensured that many young people ate during the holidays. When the government and the system were not willing to ensure that. And I think that was super important, that he was able to fight that change and keep pushing that fight. And I think last night we saw the first time that our animation has come out, and it's a brand new animation. And we've been working on it for a while, but last night we wanted it to premiere tonight, and we wanted it to premiere today and to show you guys the animation. And it's super powerful for us because it says everything that Rekindle is built for, and it shows you guys hopefully why we exist and what we aim to achieve. So if we can see that animation now, please.
Very sorry, bear with me one moment.
It's just 90 seconds.
Members of our learning, it takes communities, families, schools and role models, flexible networks that support our aspirations for those of us disenfranchised by the current education system. A unique supplementary school, Rekindle is youth-led and adult-supported, a place of nourishment we know our peers need. With mentoring and tuition by experts, it's an approach that offers support and connection, a cultural education for us about our history, to develop fierce, critical thinkers, a place where we will be challenged to be bold and to ask why again until we are sure, teaching life skills, giving the confidence and networks to soar, providing spaces for safe conversations, a soulful education, pastoral care at its core, developing an awareness of physical and mental well-being, solid foundations to catch young people when they fall, because we all fall and we all deserve to be caught. We're not a distraction from the streets, we're a far better alternative. Rekindle, the school I wish I'd attended.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Francesca. So that's our animation. The reason we're super proud is we have, I'm the oldest person by a mile that's involved in Rekindle. They call me the elder, which I've got mixed feelings about, being 45, but I'm the elder. But the group is aged 17 to 24. Our chair is 24 years old. We have a 17-year-old who is our safeguarding lead and has attended safeguarding training and has written our safeguarding policies. Jaiden sat there, put himself through accountancy and budgetary training and is in charge of governance. I think what's been particularly important for us is understanding this is going to be a supplementary school. It's going to be open 4 till 8 at night, 5 nights a week. It's going to be open on Saturday mornings. We're going to take 45 young people a night, and they are all going to be able to have a curriculum that's going to be about critical thinking and change making. They're also going to get, as Jaiden said, a free meal every night. But it's also about how do we get young people that are struggling in mainstream and not necessarily struggling academically, but just struggling with the size, the scale, young people who might have come out of the care system, young people who are young carers. This is about how do we ensure that those children who absolutely need to know that they are loved and supported and cared for by their communities can have something really cool that they want to attend. I've run youth charities. I've been that head of pastoral at schools, and quite often the provision that's there for the young people that need it most doesn't feel very cool. The kids don't want to say that they're going to this thing because there's so much kind of stigma involved in the additional, usually very good support that they can get. What we're aiming to do is to provide something that these young people will want to go to. They'll leave their schools and go to this and feel that they're getting something new, vital and cool out of it. They'll also understand that young people who were like them only a few years ago have put this together. For me, as someone who's led things for years, this has been really, I've always said I believe in youth leadership. I ran a charity that's about young people being seen, heard and leading change, but I was always at the front of it. And for the first time, this has really challenged me because I am behind and the young people are telling me what they want. So when they said we need to feed all the young people for free, I was a bit like, guys, that's quite hard to do. But they were like absolutely resolute that that needs to happen. So we've gone out and made it happen. And so there's been a real power shift in the young people actually being at the front of this thing and the adults stepping behind and saying, okay, we will try and facilitate what you think is necessary because you're the young people who've just exited your school systems or university systems and can see where the problems and the fault lines lie. Jaiden, I'll hand over to you.
Amazing. I want you guys to meet the team. So Francesca, can we see the next slide, please? So on this next slide, you'll meet the other 7 incredible young people that are building this school. And I guess, like Ruth mentioned, we've all done different roles from safeguarding to creating the website to accountancy and governance to creating the curriculum and chairing the meetings with the help of Ruth and Darren. And I think what is so important about this is that we are building it for the 12-year-old us. So I build this school for the 12-year-old Jaiden that sat in a classroom and sometimes worried about where his next meal would come from. I build this school for the 12-year-old Jaiden who absolutely loved learning but was disillusioned with the curriculum. Cara builds this school for the 12-year-old Cara who absolutely loved learning but the curriculum did not embrace her as an individual or the skill set that she wanted it to embrace. And so we all put the 12-year-old us into this school, and I think they're the important aspects, is that when we look at certain things like feeding every child every night, they are things that we need to ensure that we do because we know what it was like to be a 12-year-old child going hungry, or we know the risk that has and the impact that has on the education of a young person. And so when we are adamant to Ruth about having certain things implemented in the school, it's because we know what it's like to not have the access to those things. And that is the power of this school, and that is why we're here to do that. But I think another thing to notice is that we are majority Black and ethnic minority, majority working class, and it's important because at the minute the system is not built for those individuals, and so we want young people to look at the people that built this school and say, yeah, they look like me, they sound like me, they went through a similar experience to me. And I think having that relationship with individuals is something that we don't have often as individuals within the education system. We don't often look. I never really looked at a male teacher and said, oh, he is like me, he looks like me, sounds like me, he's been through similar experiences to what I've been through. And we really wanted to provide that for the young people and build that. But it has been difficult and frustrating to be youth-led at times. We have heard many organisations say they're ready for the next steps in education. They're ready to be youth-led. They're ready to take that chance and support more youth-led organisations. However, the actual action behind that has not been followed up. Our first 5 funding bids were submitted and written by young people and submitted by them. All of them were not accepted. We refused funding from all of them. The 6th funding bid was written by young people but submitted by Ruth, and we got accepted for funding. And it was bittersweet because it was amazing to be accepted for funding, but it was also incredibly challenging and deflating that we had also been refused for the other 5 that we had written. Nothing had changed. It's just that young people hadn't submitted it. And so the question was, what does that really say about organisations that are telling us they're ready to be youth-led, but they're actually not? And I think it's also important that we realise that we prioritise certain young people in this system. I'm sure Ruth will touch on this more, but we prioritise children in the care system. We prioritise caregivers. We prioritise those who need to fall back in love with education, because those are the ones who the system is currently failing. So I'll pass on to Ruth to tie that up a bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Jaiden. Thank you, Francesca. We don't need that slide anymore. Thank you. Yeah, and you know, there's been a few questions as to why. In some ways, someone said to me recently, why have you made life hard for yourself in the first year of a new supplementary school by going for some of the hardest to reach young people? It's a whole different conference on that phrase. But for me, it feels as if so often when I was a teacher, there'd be all these incredible opportunities for our gifted and talented children. There'd be, okay, pastoral support given for those children who might be in the care system. But what about if we put those young people who don't get the exciting, fantastic things at the heart and actually let them drive something? So our board, you know, it's none of anyone's business, but there are people there who are neurodiverse. We've got people who've been from the care system. We've got people who've struggled with their mental health. So our actual board of young people really represent the issues that we are challenging here. And what I found so frustrating when I was a teacher is quite often you'll have your youth council, which is a shiny selection of bright-eyed kids who've got really good ideas and they're really lovely and great to engage with, and they're given a limited amount that they're allowed to lead on. So they can make decisions about some things that are not really going to change, and they might even get involved in interviewing staff members, but the decision's going to be made by the head teacher really as to who's coming in. We are trying to disrupt that completely. We are saying, if you truly believe in letting young people lead, then give them the training, give them the skills, give them the opportunity, and let them lead. And when they make mistakes, be there for them. We all make mistakes. Young people are going to make more mistakes because they don't know yet. Putting Jaiden in charge of budgetary and finance was a terrifying moment for me to let go of that control, because of course he was going to make mistakes. And he was very irritating when he collected all my receipts every single day, but he's done it. And our budgets are great and they've been signed off by our accountant. So for me, there's about something in schools, statutory agencies, letting go of control and allowing young people to lead on things that they feel very passionate about. And I think if this school works, and who knows, we believe it will, we open in September, if it works and it helps some young people to fall in love with learning, to allow young people to see working class people at the front of the classroom, to see Black and Asian and minority ethnic people at the front of the classroom, then it's doing its job. Jaiden?
Absolutely. And I think one important thing that I really wanted to stress was that my journey through education was very different to many other young people. And it was very often the community that allowed me to grow through education. I didn't attend school properly until the age of 12 years old, so I had a lot of catching up to do by that time. But my grandpa was adamant that education was the only thing that would get young people off the estate and to escape the postcode. And so he turned the house into an educational sanctuary. And I hated the institution of school, but I absolutely loved learning. And I loved my grandpa teaching me, and we loved all of those aspects. And so by the age of 13 and 14, I was absolutely in love with education, and I'd caught up and I was ready to show young people that the world is there to conquer if they need it, and if they're provided with the opportunity to do that. I went from one of the 5 most deprived estates in the UK to studying PPE in Oxford, and it was not the school that enabled me to do that. It was the community around me that believed in it every step of the way. And I don't want to be political when I say this, but I want to stress that it's the community that has kept this country going over the past year, over the hardest times that we've probably faced in this generation. And it's really important that we acknowledge that. It is the community that has, you know, done the shopping for you when you can't leave the house. It is the community that has pushed the fight because they refuse to be silenced. It is the communities that have enabled individuals like me to speak up and have a voice when the algorithms have failed them. It's the communities that have allowed those things. It is the ordinary people doing extraordinary things within those communities. And I think it's really important that we recognise that, and we recognise those individuals. And so Rekindle, we open in about 6-7 months. We are £125,000 down, so we need to raise £125,000, which I'm really, really confident we can do. And the ask is, if any of you have deep pockets or know anyone that is willing to support an organisation like Rekindle, then please do get in touch. But support has come in many other ways. We've had individuals send collections of books for our young people, which the first time that happened, it brought a tear to my eye. Because young people reading and falling in love with a book is incredible. And for individuals to send collections of books because they know how important reading is genuinely incredible. And it's such a light for the team at Rekindle to see. So any support is massively appreciated. And on the presenting side, that's me done. So thank you so much for listening. But I'm going to hand back over to Ruth to do the final message.
I'm just laughing because we had a conversation yesterday where Jaiden said, I'm going to ask them for money. I said, Jaiden, don't ask them for money. He said, I'm going to ask them. You never know how much money someone might have. So if anyone does have £125,000, you know to send it to Jaiden. Just to kind of close us out, I'm just going to say one thing he didn't mention was they've raised over £280,000, which is a group of young people. It shows you kind of how this thing is building. They've also managed to get commitments from incredible organisations and restaurants to feed the young people for free for the first year. So on Monday to Friday, Manchester restaurants are going to feed a hot meal to these young people every single night for free. And on Saturdays, we've just had a local person come forward and say they're going to pay for the group to have lunch free every Saturday. Power of community. I just want to say that for me, I hope that through this pandemic, what comes out of it is that communities remember how powerful they can be when they work together, and how it's not about waiting for people educated at Eton to notice us and to provide what we need. We can do it. We actually, when we've got the strength and we push together, we can do this. Watching communities of young people locked into their university rooms, meeting every week on Zoom to create a school has just shown me that everything is possible. And, you know, Jaiden's amazing. I've just seen the chat, and of course, everyone's saying he's amazing. He's quite good, yes, but there's a Jaiden on every street. Like literally, I know so many Jaidens, and I just think it's a shame that we wait until they bubble up into these spaces for us to think that they're extraordinary. They just need the opportunities that he was given. And like, you know, Jaiden's very humble about crediting the community who came and supported him when he needed it most. So for me, Rekindle is something that is necessary. Rekindle is something that could be in every community. I'd love it to be something that is trialled in the north of England and then moves to the rest of the country. What about if our local working class young people came up with something game changing for education? So we're going to invite you all to come and see it. Not all of you, maybe some of you, to come and visit and to come and see us. And we hope you all wish us well. So that's the end of our formal talk. But I know that some of you have been sending questions that people are feeding to me on my phone. So in a minute, I'm going to have a look at and see if we've got any questions to answer. But I hope that was useful and interesting to people. 2 people are nodding. Good. Okay. Jaiden, I'm going to feed you a question. I've just got something coming through here. Okay. Were there any disagreements? Were there any disagreements between the approach to education from the young leaders in Rekindle and what they should be learning? How are you negotiating these? Do you want to take that one on?
That one.
Were there any disagreements between the approach to education? I'm thinking about the SNAP framework, Jaiden. Do you want to start on that one? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were quite a few disagreements in terms of how we approach it. And we had our first meeting, and Ruth literally put an idea on the table and said, okay, guys, like build this school. And obviously in that initial meeting, there were disagreements around the way that we challenged the education system and what was actually needed within that system. And then we came up with the fact that we needed to prioritize certain young people. And we were all we all had this common understanding of the young people that we needed to prioritize. We all had the common understanding of how we go about that. And we created some sort of SNAP framework that basically decided from now to where we need to be, what does that journey look like? And in creating that SNAP framework, we saw a lot of disagreement within the group in terms of how we get to the end goal.
What's the SNAP framework, Jaiden?
So the SNAP framework is basically, are we talking nourish, achieve, protect? Yes, so the SNAP framework is nourish, achieve, and protect, support. So what this means is that we support, achieve, protect, and nurture every young person that is in our program. And how we do that is what we disagreed on. How do we get to the end goal where we are in a place where we support, nourish, achieve, and protect? What needs to be in place for that to happen? Each young person is facing very, very different experiences at home. And so the disagreements were, how do we make that relative so that every young person can experience the same things, but also treat every young person as an individual?
Thanks, Jaiden. By the way, the video we're going to send, literally we've launched it here. It's had 3 views before you guys saw it. So if you want to support us, a really good way would be to share it and tell people about the fact we exist. We've literally been in lockdown planning this thing. It'd be really nice to kind of liaise with the rest of the world. From Katie's side, how did this amazing group of people come together? Okay, well, I'll take this one. I was the founder of a charity called Reclaim that's about working class young leadership. And several of the young people who are as trustees for Rekindle are now adults who went through the Reclaim process, but not all. Some were just young people that we have interacted with over the years. And it was about young people who felt passionate and driven about change and felt that education could and should be done better. So that was there's only 8 young people. That was the starting point. And we're looking at whether or not we need to bring more young people in. But at the moment, the 8 are kind of holding this thing and driving it really professionally. And a question from Fatima. This is such an inspiring idea. Thank you, Fatima. Can you share reflections on how you've generated and brought ideas into reality and got community and young people's buy-in? Jaiden?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first it's about believing in the ability of the group and believing in the cause. You can't truly create the change if you don't believe in what you're doing. And it was such a cause that we all believed in. But how have we gone about getting that support and that we have, from young people, we have been youth-led from the start. We have written the emails to say, look, this is the support we need, really passionate about the organization, but also straight to the point of, this is what we need. We're a school and we need certain things to open. And I think that's how we've got the support. But I also think that we've all been on an individual journey that has allowed the skill set to be used for Rekindle. I went through the first ever project on Reclaim, which was Ruth's first organization. So I've gained a skill set over the past 6-7 years that has allowed me to bring that into Rekindle and use that. And other individuals have been on very similar journeys where they've been able to use certain experiences, from asking for funding to creating curriculums to writing a safeguarding lead to asking for pro bono support. It's been the mentoring that we've had along the way that has allowed us to do those things.
I was gonna add a couple of things to that. I think for me, and maybe after that year I spent in the boarding school, the thing I became aware of was the fact that there were 9 and 10-year-olds in that school who could network, who could work a room, had the absolute confidence, more confidence than I had at 23, who, if someone of significance was in front of them, they would shake their hand and ask for, it'd be great to see you again. And I'm like, you are 9, what is going on here? And so one of the things that we're doing with the young people on Rekindle is, do you know what? There's a whole world out there full of resources that you can access. Just go for it. Just try. If you get knocked back, so what? Keep trying. And one of my favourite days was when Jaiden sent me a WhatsApp asking me, like, how should he address Stormzy? Should he call him Mr. Storm? He's like, I'm writing to him for support. Like, how do you address Stormzy? And then wrote a letter to Andy Burnham. And then the next minute was about to write to Will Smith. And I was just like, do you know what? Yes. And maybe none of them got back to him. But it's something about young people who might be sat on a council estate somewhere, but understanding that they've got the right to engage with anyone and look at them as a peer. So that's the first thing. The second thing I was going to say was, and we had a really good question from Sarah Gifford. What role would you like for universities to play to support initiatives like this, enable young people? And I remembered that terribly, myself and Jaiden forgot to mention that we pitched this to Manchester Metropolitan University, who really loved the idea, and they are working with us, and they're going to have a student from their university every night sitting with a young person for an hour's homework support. Because a problem for many of the students that we're going to be working with is they will have no one to help them with their homework and no quiet space to do their homework. So they will have a desk at Rekindle, and our 5 till 6 p.m. every single night is homework hour, where university students who've been trained and have obviously we put them through all the checks, will come and sit with one student and help them with their homework, because that's such a stressful thing for young people, feel that they've got no support for things they're struggling with. So the university have been fantastic, and Manchester Metropolitan University are also going to find us a building so that we're housed on their campus. So the young people who go to Rekindle School understand that university could be for them in the future. Jaiden, do you freelance? Could you do my budget?
Absolutely. Let's talk. No, I don't. I'm really, really busy. I'm studying. Ruth gave me like a really stern look then. Like, you're studying. I'm studying, and yeah, it's really, no. I only did an accountancy course for Rekindle.
No, the answer's no, a polite and firm no. Right, okay. Pippa, can you share any issues that came up that you hadn't expected in advance? I've got one, and maybe give you a chance to think as well, Jaiden. Obviously, we weren't expecting lockdown. We started this when we could see each other, and we've not seen each other since. So that was keeping young people motivated during lockdown has been really hard. But I know we both touched on the algorithms. But when that happened, that was such a blow to our group. It profoundly affected people in our group, I think, because they saw something bigger, I think, in that, and saw that maybe not everyone was rooting for them to succeed in the same way. And I personally felt that the few weeks after that scandal, and I do think it was a scandal, happened, was the hardest for the group, because there was a lot more kind of, there's no point. Not there's no point, but can we really disrupt this system? It's so set not for people like us. So that was something that I found really dispiriting.
Yeah,
Jaiden?
absolutely. And I think it's along similar lines, but one of the hardest challenges when you're creating any organization or building anything is the communication. When certain things go wrong, like the algorithm, when young people are failed by a system that you're trying to correct, how do you then correct that and see hope in the institution that you're trying to build, or the organization that you're trying to build? And that is when I think that is the biggest challenge that we've faced, is that communication when things go wrong. Okay, guys, this has gone wrong, but it's not a chance, like, it's not an opportunity to give up. We build back stronger. But I think getting to that point where we can say, let's build back stronger, is often the hardest point to reach. So yeah, I think it's just around the idea of, when we continually see the system fail, how do we then build back stronger?
Yeah. Monica has asked, I love that you talk about falling in love with learning. How do you think we can best redefine learning as something lovable?
I think we have to distinguish learning and education. They're different things. I fell in love with learning. I didn't fall in love with education. And they're very, very different things. And I think once we recognize that, and we're probably at fault sometimes when we say we want people to fall in love with education, we don't. We want them to fall in love with learning. And I think when we recognize that and we put that into the education system, we allow young people to learn that they can learn without being entirely engaged in the education system. They just have to be involved in learning. And I think that is the important process.
Yeah, I agree, Jaiden. And I think, we're lucky because we're a supplementary school, so obviously we don't have to follow the national curriculum. But we have said that there will be a curriculum, but our curriculum's around critical thinking, our curriculum's around cultural education. It's around the things, at the moment we're working on, how do we work on financial literacy? So because so many working class young people end up in debt so quickly, especially young people at the care system. So how do we actually make financial literacy really interesting for young people to learn? And then every Friday we're getting homework, and we're going to have a cultural education, a creative and cultural night. So we're getting authors to come in, we're having book evenings, we're having film evenings, we're asking for films that have kind of been really transformational, and people in the community who felt that these films would shape them to come and talk afterwards and have kind of Q&As with the young people. One of the key things that we're doing though is this school is going to be a community resource. I'm from a Nigerian family. We're very big on the whole, it takes a village to raise a child, and we want our parents and we want our community to come into our school. And a lot of the parents of some of these children might not have had positive school experiences themselves. So we're very much about, on Fridays, when we have the films and when we're all sitting down to enjoy time together, parents are allowed in to come in and share the food. Parents are invited to come and share, like, what was their school experience like? What might some of their barriers been? What was their favourite moment in school? So I always felt that my school did parental engagement really, really badly. Like we already had a predetermined about which families were difficult, which ones you could engage with. And it's like, you know, we have to see past the fact that some people have actually had very, very difficult relationships with school and education. So we are going to ensure that our families play a big role in what we're doing. And that's how we want people to fall in love with learning. I think I've got time for one more. Ben, who's going to send Jaiden a private message pledging a monthly donation? They've got 4 minutes to do it. Right, okay. Oh, got three really good questions, Jaiden. Quick. What subject do you think should be cut from mainstream education? That's harsh. And what should it be replaced with?
I don't think it should be cut, but I think it should be replaced with a new curriculum, history. I think every young person should be completely taught about their history. It should be relative to each young person, you know. So many young people, when we're learning about history, their history is not seen. You know, they are not seen within that curriculum. So I think it should be completely reformed. I think history needs to go and be reformed.
Yeah, love that. Do pupils from middle class affluent backgrounds have a place in the system you're envisioning?
They have a place to support, and I think we can only do this with the support of other individuals. They know what it's like to grow up with certain values taught to them from a very young age, and we look for mentoring support for our young people so that our young people don't have an inferiority complex when they step through the doors of Oxford or through the doors of LSE, so that they don't have an inferiority complex when they're going through education. And I think it's really important for those individuals to tell us how we best equip young people with those skills, having been through that their whole life.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're being really unapologetic about the young people that we're here to support. So one of the things that we were asked recently was, could we think of the next Rekindle, but maybe not in such a working class area, you know, and we thought about it and we were like, no, not yet. That's not for us. Actually, we know the communities of young people that need this most, and we're not going to be distracted from that. So we might go to other cities, but if we go to other cities, we're going to be working with working class young people in those cities, with groups of working class young people leading that school. And it's not that middle class children wouldn't benefit from Rekindle, but they don't need it as much. And sometimes you just have to say no. And those young people might go through to the university and volunteer and support these young people. But this school is by working class young people for predominantly working class young people, and we're kind of holding fast to that and being quite unapologetic about it. We've got 30 seconds left, Jaiden. Oh, there's a big question about generational gap between my generation and Generation Z, which we've only got 30 seconds left to do. Jaiden, how do we broach a generational gap between me and you guys?
This question has come up so many times, and I think in so many presentations you've talked about this question. How do we approach the failures of the education system are still there? You know, whether it was Ruth's generation or whether it's my generation, we have both been failed in very similar ways. The education might have been very different for us, but the actual failings, the parts that the education system did not recognize as individuals, are still there. And I think that's how we bridge that gap. We work on an education system that will be better for everyone. And that's not a generational thing. That's a thing that we've not yet conquered.
Oh my goodness me, Jaiden, you're such a fantastic speaker. Right, okay, we have exactly landed on the right time to finish talking to you all. I hope that was interesting, useful, etc., etc. I love talking to Jaiden anyway, so it's just felt like we've got new friends in the room. I've just spotted that someone said, how can they donate? So I will be sending details on. Thank you very much. I don't know who that was, but thank you. We desperately need the money. So if you know people who might want to give us money, then please give us a shout. But genuine look out for this school and share the animation, because we need people to know about what we're doing. Thank you. I'll hand back to Adam.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was so incredibly inspirational. So exciting to hear these sorts of ideas, community power type ideas, breaking into education. Really, I'm sure, you know, the chat is amazing. People have been so inspired by it. I'd really urge everyone to share, to tweet, whatever, share the message about what Ruth and Jaiden and the rest of the team there are doing, because it really is hugely important that we take on the serious flaws in education. So thank you both. That was a brilliant way of ending the day.